Welcome to NEK VT Rocks, and my guests today are Diana Poulin and Nancy Nash. And you guys are potters.
Correct.
And nobody ever thinks about pottery in everyday life, but everything that we eat off or drink out of, unless it's a glass, really is thanks to a potter at some point along the way. Where do you guys work? What do you do?
Well, I work out of a mother-in-law apartment studio that
cool.
came with our house. Works perfectly. I have everything that I need. It's small, and it's right down below where I live, so I can go there all the time, which I do.
That's nice. Where do you work?
I have a studio that I built onto my house, and it's large enough to have classes in also. So I have a gallery there with my work, and then I do classes in the meantime to pay the bills.
Yeah. Do you both teach?
Yes.
What? I know both of you display your work at NAC, which is on Main Street, and probably everybody knows. And your work has similarities, obviously, because it's from clay, but it also has a lot of differences. Are there major differences in the way you work?
Very much so.
What do you do that's different?
I work on the wheel. Now, once in a while, I'll do something that's similar to what Nancy does, if I see something that, sparks my interest. But I work on the wheel, and wheel work takes a lot of practice before you get to the point that you're consistent with what you're doing. And it has a beauty to it that I really like. I love the centering, I love the pull in the walls, I like everything about it's sort of a zen-like feeling. When you're there, you really lose yourself in it. I think anytime you handle clay, you lose yourself in it. But so that's the main difference, is I work on a wheel.
What do you do?
And I am what you would call either a slab potter or a hand-built potter or hand-fashioned potter. It's listed under all three names if you ever go looking for it, which means that I roll out a piece of clay until it's the thickness I want, and then I work from there. So rather than coaxing the clay upward, which is what you do in the wheel pottery, I'm putting it flat and then trying to coax it into where I want and to keeping it there. So it's tricky, and there's a lot of things that are added by putting on a separate appendage that you wouldn't have to do if you were using a wheel. But it's wicked fun. Like I tell my students, it's like working with pie crust.
That's a great analogy.
Try to imagine forming it into something, and you know that it'd kind of fall apart after a while if you tried to make it into a cup form or a mug or something like that. But it's got a very fast learning curve, and people are successful with it rapidly.
Okay.
Which is really nice.
And is that true in the same way for wheel work?
No. My students always want to make big mugs, and I just have a little chuckle. It's like, we'll get there. We'll get there. They start off with very small pieces. Sometimes they're heavy pieces, and it's a process learning the wheel, and it's a beautiful process. I think most people enjoy it, but it's not for everybody.
Right.
And anyone who wants to roll out clay and make something else, I'm happy. I have one student now that I'm helping to do that, because it's more of what they desire to do. So do what makes you happy.
I mean, full confession here, I'm somebody for whom the wheel was not really the best way to work. After I watched one piece that I had lovingly coaxed up go flying across the room, and being asked, did you forget to do X, Y, or Z? Apparently. I thought, Yeah. Are you able to work with young people?
I certainly could, but my classes are all for adults.
Right.
Yes, I wouldn't take anyone under the age of 16. And my main feeling is I think there's a lot in the area for children in art, and I think there's very little for adults.
That's true.
And I think it's really important for adults to tap into their artistic side.
Yeah.
And the thing I love about what I do is I didn't start doing it until I probably was 48 or so. And I wanted to be artistic, but everything I tried, I was like, you're pottery, art, music, all of that.
Oh,
something
you're telling me my pottery was garbage?
No, I'm telling you that my things went flying where they were supposed to go too. So I came from an artistic family, but I didn't feel very artistic. And then when I found the wheel, so I really enjoy it when other people can share that too and find something that, you know, you have no idea whether you can do it or not until you try, or whether you'd like it or not.
Right. Yeah. Did you start younger with
pottery?
Yeah.
Uh,
Or are you another geriatric who came to it later in life?
She actually blackmailed me into doing my first pottery on the wheel, literally. I lived here most of my life and then moved away for 20 years, and then I've just moved back. But the whole time I'd moved away, I returned home numerous times over the course of the year. And at one point, we loved to go shopping in Canada, in Sherbrooke, and I wanted to go. And she said, not until you've sat down and thrown something on the wheel, anything.
So you threw something at the wheel?
No, I actually had a lot of luck the first time. A lot of luck, which happens. Didn't quite happen over and over again, but it happened. And then we went shopping.
You got your reward.
She literally, I really was resistant, and I knew from that time that I wanted to do flat pottery, not a wheel. And I've always wanted to, because the flat pottery gives me incredible options. I can build something this big and long and rectangular, which you can't do on a wheel.
Right.
I like the fact that I can add on stuff and warp it and twist it and pinch it and do things like that. So. So I don't know. I've been doing pottery for about 10 years, something like that. I love it. I have never gone back to the wheel after a while. I tried and tried and tried.
You got blackmailed again and a couple of times.
No. I finally just said no. I want it to do slab pottery, and from there on in, that's what I've been doing.
Yeah. What's probably not clear to anybody watching, although maybe when they look at you they've figured it out, you guys are sisters.
Yeah.
Are there other family members in the area who are potters?
Oh, no. They're tired of hearing about it.
Yeah. Although you did say that you came from a family that's artistic.
Everyone's creative in the family, but in their different ways. And both of us came up through a long list of other things that we did creatively before we landed in the spot we are now. And I certainly don't say that I'm going to be a potter forever. If something else appeals to me, it'll be like,
You'll incorporate it.
Yeah. Well, no.
Or move on.
Move on. Yeah.
That's actually a really neat philosophy, which is this is now, and I can do this now, and then I can incorporate, change, move, just follow whatever my path is.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
It's kind of like having a job. At some point, it's no longer fun and you want to do something else.
Yeah.
And so if you're smart, you move out of it rather quickly and get to the next thing.
Absolutely. Although that's not what people are taught in school.
No.
Which is you decide on your career path, you're stuck in it for life, and you better be satisfied with that. So to hear that there really are choices.
A lot of choices.
Yeah.
And most of the choices that we have done have been together. We tended to do things together. And move and change and do something new.
So you have a partner in crime.
Absolutely. For almost everything, no. For almost everything. We do a lot together.
What else do you do?
What else have I done? Because they are all past. I pretty much started out with making quilts. And during the whole time I was a teacher of junior high kids, but I always taught adults in the evening because it was fun. and then I did floor cloths, painted floor cloths. Moved on to weaving, which I did for a number of years, and then moved on to female clay jewelry, right when it first started. And then I think pottery was after that. I'm pretty sure that's the way it went, kind of like that. So, and each stint lasted for, between 2-7 years, something like that.
Yeah. Do you have a similar path?
I did quilting also. When All through our lives, we did a lot of sewing. We actually sewed for a designer in Montgomery once when we were in our teens, and did all of the hip mod clothing there. That was a lot of fun. I think that I tended to be more outdoorsy a lot of times. I did a lot of hiking and cross-country skiing. Nothing very extreme. I'm a little laid back about it. But so I spent a lot of my time outdoors every chance I can get to, be doing something like that. And I love, picking up sticks and thinking about things in nature. I like to think that it influences some of my more out there pottery. Pottery is never far from my mind.
Right. One of the exhibits recently at NEK, the one called Blue.
Yes.
There was some of your work in there that incorporated twigs and pieces of wood,
Yes.
and other really interesting things in that way. Do you have that work on display anywhere?
I have two pieces of the horsehair pottery. That's a different type of pottery that I also do with an alternative firing. And I am working on more pieces. It's quite tricky to get the twigs wired onto the pottery, or I've been using jute more because that will tighten up as it dries. But it's always a tricky process getting them there, but I can't seem to stop myself, so there'll be more twigs coming.
Let me know if you need any more horsehair or cat hair.
Okay.
I have an abundance of both.
Horsehair we always need, but right now I can't do firings until the weather warms up again, because
Right.
it's an outdoor firing.
Oh. Do you do all your firing outside?
No, most of my pottery is functional,
Yeah.
and it's with standard glazes, and it's all microwave safe, dishwasher safe.
Yeah.
But these other pieces are just decorative. And some people would call it raku, but I don't believe it's true raku. I call it more alternative.
Huh.
So you don't want to use it to eat off from.
No. Well, probably not, but I'm happy to supply you with hair.
And I would say, but we usually go to classes together, but we try to go to one about once a year, and they often include something about the different kinds of firing that we could be doing if we maybe purchased extra kilns or different glazes stuff, and it's always tons of fun because you get to go bring your pottery, actually do some, and then take it home and see whether or not you're ready to try to do it yourself, build your own little kiln, which we did together.
You built your own kiln.
Yes.
That's impressive.
Out of a trash can.
Wow.
And it works.
Huh.
It still works.
Yes.
Wow. Because when you're heating in a kiln, it's really high temperature.
The hand-built kiln, we get up to 1,400 degrees. And the regular kilns go up to 2,220 degrees, which is the temperature of a volcano.
Wow. And you've managed to do that in a trash can.
No, 1,400.
Well,
1,400.
that's still pretty warm.
It's very hot, very hot. It's a little scary.
Yeah. Did you still have that kiln?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
you
use
use
it
it?
twice a year, yes.
That's the one outside?
Yes.
Yeah.
She uses it more than I do now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you heat it up with a weed burner.
I have to come and see this sometime.
I would love
that-
to do it.
that would
Sometime
be
it'd be nice.
just-
But the last time we did a public exhibit for our pottery class when we were at a workshop,
right.
and everyone, we totally failed. Everything we did was wrong. So
Yeah, it has to do with the fact that there's a difference between centigrade and Fahrenheit on
This
the
is
little
true,
box.
there is.
yes,
We didn't quite realize that.
Ah.
yes.
So, no, total failure. Everyone waited, and it was a total failure.
Well, that was a learning
That was a
curve
learning
itself.
experience. Yes.
It was.
That would be actually really fun to organize a workshop around that.
They the workshops we do. It's probably 4 or 5 days where all they do is fire these kilns day after day after day, and everything turns out totally different depending on the atmosphere, the temperature of the kiln.
Yeah.
And it could be something that we did and people watch, but you can't let other people get in there unless they
have a clue.
Yes.
Right, they really have to have a clue, because some of what you're doing, you're removing these pieces when they're insanely hot and
Right.
attempting to lay horsehair on them in a matter of probably
Which
8
sizzles,
to
I
10
presume.
seconds.
Yes.
You have no time.
Yeah.
And then the other one, it bursts into flames in sawdust, and then you take it out with giant tongs, and you're dressed to the nth to stop that, and plunge it into cold water.
And it doesn't
On-
shatter?
It doesn't.
You hope it doesn't.
Ah.
True.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, it's exciting. It's wildly exciting and really, really fun.
I would love to see that.
Mm-hmm.
And I bet you could find other people around here who would also love to see it.
Well, I know anyone who's taken pottery would love to see it. 'Cause
Yeah.
Right.
they all have questions about how is it done and can they do it, and you really need a workshop to be able to do this type of.
Or 6.
Yeah.
It takes a while to learn it, even after you think you
Yeah.
learned it.
But even if you just did a demonstration,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
that would be pretty amazing. And maybe that's something that MAC, because they
Right.
have a community piece attached to them, maybe that's something that they would be willing to organize. Because MAC now has some artists who work in less familiar ways. I mean, a lot of people understand quilting, but some of the painting techniques or the tinsmithing
Yes.
that is currently available there, and what you guys are doing, that's really different.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're not exposed to things like that, how do we ever know?
It's true.
And some of the blacksmithing kinds of techniques that I know people do. I know the old stone house does some of the blacksmithing.
The old stone house does quite a bit of old-fashioned art.
Yeah,
They do the basket weaving also. I'm trying to think of something else.
yeah,
I was there one day with a school,
yeah,
and the basket weaving was pretty incredible. They were having a community basket woven.
Right.
It was really beautiful.
yeah. Yeah, I've taken a couple of workshops up there, and they were really fun.
Yep. I thought of, haven't quite gotten up there yet, but I thought of it. And I've seen the metal smithing being done.
Yeah.
That was really interesting.
Yeah.
Really interesting. Yeah. No, it's a great place to go and
Mhm.
learn things.
We have so many resources around here, and yet so often we don't even know about them. Because we're not very good, I think, up here at publicizing what we do and what we have to offer.
I was going to say, it's getting better and better, though.
Yes.
Frankly, the Newport, Vermont Rocks is crazy good for finding out what's going on this weekend. Like, how do you find out what's going on this weekend? And
Right.
it works better than the posters in the windows.
Yeah.
Of local
You have to be
pieces.
on Facebook for something like that, and
Yes, you
not
do.
everybody is.
Yeah, that's
I'm-
true.
Yeah, I mean, these videos from this show, which is both on the TV for those who can get that station,
Right.
but it's available as a YouTube video. And the goal is to let people know what's out there. How can we learn different things? How can we sort of broaden our little model of the world?
Yeah.
And
And you're right, there's a lot going on, but it's
Yeah.
not getting to the people as to where or when it is, or
right,
when it's happening.
yeah.
And,
And I think pottery, sort of bringing us back full circle here, is one of those things that we don't even really think about. Because, yeah, we're eating off a plate, but how does it become a plate? How do we turn a slab of clay that most kids have worked with at some point into a functional and beautiful plate? How do we make some of those gorgeous mugs? I had my coffee this morning in a mug that was one of yours.
Oh, thank you. And that's, to me, such an interesting thing. When I have people come in the studio or I have an open house, they will walk right to a mug and pick it up. And I always tell them, make sure you pick up every mug in that color.
Because they're different.
They feel very different. And then you become really attached to a nice piece of pottery.
Yes.
So, I really like it when people handle every piece of pottery they can see to see which one
Right.
fits their hand or which one is the right weight. Some people want it light, some people want it heavier. A lot of people want a heavy mug, like a diner mug. Some people want a narrow bottom. It's all very taste specific, That's why
And the
there's so much
rim,
pottery.
it has to be
Yes.
the right rim, whatever that means.
Yes, no, the rim is very, very important.
Yeah.
But to me, it's the handle many times. The handle has to fit your hand.
Yes. And yet what fits my hand might not fit your hand.
Right, and I try to make at least 3 or 4 really large handles because a lot of men have a much bigger hand than I would have. And they really have trouble getting more than 2 fingers into the handles of a normal mug.
So
I hear
that really interferes with your coffee when you try and drink with
Probably.
just 2 fingers. It doesn't work at all.
Right.
I think sometimes when people look at beautiful pottery, they think, this is too beautiful to use.
Yes.
But isn't that a shame?
It is.
Yes.
It
It's
is.
the same with quilts, too.
Yes.
People won't use a beautiful quilt. And, you know,
And yet
it-
they're washable, so why not?
they are, but, you know, if you want to consider something a piece of art, there's nothing wrong with that either.
True.
Yes, I have a beautiful picture that someone gave me once, just a plain white picture, and I've never used it. I just look at it and admire it.
Yeah. And speaking of that, I know we've brought pottery back from other countries when we've traveled. And found out afterwards that it was really fortunate we didn't use them, or we've used them and learned afterwards that the lead content was high.
Right.
Oops.
Yes.
Obviously the pottery that's made up here is lead free.
Right.
And
And I would think any place that, you know, was a typical pottery studio, you know, would have dinner safe pottery.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Though it's a useful question to ask.
It is, and I've gotten at least 2 questions from other people, hearing that I do hand building. They assume I'm doing something a little more rustic, which truly isn't the case at all.
Right.
The pottery isn't. My pottery isn't rustic.
Your
most of it
pottery
at
is
all.
lovely.
But and they wanted to use local clay. I found clay here, and I want to see if I can make something out of it. And it's like, that's all well and good, and you can try it, but most of your potters aren't willing to test their kiln to see if it will, or what temperature. Yeah, you know, the clays that you pre-buy know what temperature they go to best.
Yeah.
You know, they've done all the work for you ahead of time.
Yeah.
So yes, it's possible to do, but whether or not they would be usable or even porous, you don't know.
So if I dig below the sand in my garden, which the top, God knows how many layers of sand, and I hit the clay underneath, that would not be smart to dig up and suggest I could make a pot out of it.
Well, you could certainly make a pot out of it. There's no, and you could dry it, and it would be a pot. Firing it gets trickier.
Yeah.
To fire it to make it vitrify is what they call, so that it
Yeah.
adheres. Yeah, and you might be able to get somebody to fire it for you, but
Maybe we
not
should
me.
bring that to your outdoor kiln. The
Oh,
trash
that would
can
be
kiln.
that would be very interesting, but I don't know how you would test it for certain things.
I've
either.
heard of a technique, and I haven't tried it out yet, that all clays melt at different temperatures. And if you take a local clay and you put it in a bowl that you know will not melt and fire it, you'll see whether or not it's going to melt. You know, if you shape it into a little pinch pot, and if it doesn't melt, then you can use it.
Yeah.
Now, food safe and all of that, if it's covered with a glaze, I would think it would be. However, if it does melt, you can use it as a glaze, which I think would be very cool. Again, I wouldn't dare eat off from it or anything without having it professionally
Right.
tested, but it'd be really nice to use a local glaze made from, say, clay from Brownington Pond or something like that. Now, that would just be a very cool thing.
That
But
would.
again, that takes quite a bit of experiment, and I haven't taken the time to do it. But I do have some clay I've thought about doing it with. I would love to try like a black clay, if anyone has black clay around here.
Does anybody have black clay that you know
The one I
about?
have is quite a dark gray. So again, haven't taken the time to do it, but I have it sitting there in the studio.
Yeah, it's interesting because sort of, as you're thinking about clay, tend not to think that it's all different colours. Naturally,
Right,
different
right.
colours. We spent time in India, and in one particular area, the clay is bright red. It's gorgeous, gorgeous colour. Sort of redder than a terracotta pot. And they used to make little cups there. They didn't glaze them. So everybody would sit around and have tea out of them, and then they'd just throw it into a pile, and then it would be used again, which was really interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And when I moved away, I was on an island that had spectacular colored cliffs, island of Martha's Vineyard. They're incredible. And you can get white clay, you can get the red you said, it's like a terracotta but darker, a little
Yeah.
deeper. They have a black clay. They have the regular sand colored clay. So you could literally, and they are all kind of mud clays as
Yeah.
they come in, and they're all saltwater clays. And certainly you could go and get pieces of every one of those and try them. But it's time consuming, and if you're like me and a potter, you want to just make your things rather than experiment with them. I don't have much interest in having a heavily grogged clay mug.
Yeah.
I want things that people use on a regular basis, and that's pretty much what most of mine
Yeah.
is something that's functional. And the glazing is pretty crazy because I use up to 9 layers of glaze
Wow.
on some of my pots. Mm-hmm.
And you have to fire each time?
No.
No.
No, no. But there's a process of layering glazes
Mhm.
that can create really incredible effects with the colors. You can find some glazes that run
Yeah.
and will pull other glazes down with them, so you get a streaky effect. Some glazes sit there and cause a smoky, snowy effect. The glazes they're putting out now are amazing and really, really fun to play with.
Huh.
Really fun to play with. It takes a fair amount of time to get
Mhm.
9 coats of glaze on them.
I would think
Poppy.
it takes a lot of time.
Well, because they have to be dried between each one.
Yeah.
So, but it's really, really fun to play. For me, I love making what I make, and I like working with the clay, but I really love the glazing. That's what it is.
Mm.
And I'm kind of tangled up in blue. As you know, most of my things are in the realm of blue or green,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a few white, and now there's going to be some copper colored in there too.
I have a piece of yours that's a dark red
Yes,
colour.
that would have been one of the glazes that Diana uses more
Yeah.
frequently. When I was doing some of them, I would steal her glazes. And that's not one that I have anymore or
Mhm.
use, but I love the
It's
I
a
love the
lovely colour.
It's a lovely color.
Yeah.
But I find it hard not to go to blue. So therefore, that's just what I
Blue.
have for the pottery. It's what I have. And I
And
like
you
it.
might change your mind in another
Absolutely.
2 months.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, into a whole different line.
Does glazing have the same fascination for you?
I find glazing difficult.
Uh-huh.
My glazes are done, I dip my pieces into the glazes most of the time. Once in a while I'll hand paint a piece, but I don't experiment as much with my glazes. Yeah, glazing's more of a challenge to me, and I tend to do the ones that I really like over and over again, experiment with a rim or something, but
Mm.
my fascination is more in the making of the piece than in the
Shape.
glazing.
Mhm.
Yes,
Shape, yeah.
yes. I always want to see how far I can push that clay.
How far can you push it?
Until it breaks, usually.
Yeah.
That's how you really learn. If you're not
Yeah.
not having a piece of pottery collapse on you once a week, you're not doing
You're not doing it right.
you're not trying. You're not pushing the limits.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, from my very limited experience with a wheel, I know the sensation of bringing it up.
Yeah. It's just a little thrill every time that you get
Yeah.
a piece that, does what you want it to. Sometimes the clay behaves nice. There's a really nice term called wabi-sabi.
Mm-hmm.
And I may not have it correctly, but it's nothing's finished, nothing's perfect, nothing lasts forever. And some of my best pieces have been mistakes. The piece that you were referencing
Yeah.
in the Mac, that was a mistake.
Wow. That was a
And-
beautiful mistake.
Well, I refired it,
Yeah.
and I changed handles on it, and so that one took a lot more care. But if you work with a mistake, sometimes it's meant to be a thing of beauty.
Huh.
And lots of times when you're playing with the clay and taking it to the very last place of stability,
Mhm.
you'll get something really amazing going on with it.
Oh. We are almost out of time. Where can people find information about your classes or about just where to look for your pottery?
Well, for me, the pottery is primarily at the Mac.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I almost exclusively do it. I'm trying to or working on getting a website or an Instagram site up that
Mhm.
will allow people to purchase. I have friends that I have had on Facebook, just personal friends that will see some of my pottery. I almost always throw it up there once I've got a
Sure.
good kiln. And they'll call and say, I like this one, can you send it to me? Because they're mostly from the island.
Right.
And so I will mail it out, but I don't have a good access to people other than the Mac. But the
Okay.
Mac's it's been a great spot for me to have the pottery.
Where are your classes advertised?
My classes are in the mother-in-law apartment.
And
I can have 4 people at a time. I only have 1 class at a time. I don't do 2 classes.
And how do people find out when your classes are?
Right now, I'm full, and I will stay full until these students no longer want to continue with me. So I would never pull somebody out
Sure.
or say you've got, 2 sets of classes and now you're on your own. So no, I'll just keep the same people I have. I've considered putting in another morning class, but right now I'm busy enough. So
Okay.
I
So
probably
someday you may have
Right.
classes again.
I do classes because I love to teach.
Yeah.
I was a teacher. I love to teach, but I also love just having. It's a very uplifting. People laugh and joke
Yeah.
and stuff, and it's a
Sure.
fun time. And
Mhm.
so they're my buddies.
Yeah,
So,
that's great.
and
How do they find out about your classes?
The best way is to call me, and you can find me on Facebook. You can also pick up a business card at the Mac Gallery.
Okay.
But like Nancy, my classes are full. When someone starts taking, you don't say, "I'm sorry, you're done. Your time's up." So my classes
Sorry,
are
your expiry
Right.
date has happened.
So my classes will be full. Occasionally there's an opening. I do have at least 12 people on the waiting list now, but
Wow.
if anyone's really interested, they can call and add their
Yeah.
name to the waiting list. And you usually get a call from me when there's only 2 or 3 days to decide because someone has dropped out due to illness or something. So that's the kind of the way it works. And I wish there were more pottery classes because there's a great interest in it.
Well, maybe when people hear this, there'll be a bigger demand, and then maybe somebody else will be willing
Right.
to teach.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you both so much for coming.
Thank you, Pam.
And
Yeah.
when people want to look at your work and other potters' work, they can go into the Mac Gallery and see it there and pick up your cards, which I assume
Yes.
has contact information.
Yes, it
for
does.
you.
yes, yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you both for coming.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you. This has been fun.
Yeah, it always is.